Welcome back, movie lovers. Story recaps here. Today, we will explore 2021 drama horror movie Deadly Illusions starring Kristen Davis. Let's begin. Movie begins with Mary starting the day with breakfast with family. Mary Morrison is a famous author who had multiple hits in the past and living as a full-time mom. The husband Tom kisses her goodbye and leaves for office. Mary drops her kids to school. She has separate ritual for both her kids, which really highlights her devotion as a mother. After that, we see Mary getting ready for a meeting with her agent. Her agent places his concerns about how the publishing market has changed and how the glory of her previous work is fading. So he wants Mary to write a new book for the previously hit series to reclaim their position in the market. Mary was not expecting that and was upset. She even asked them to leave at one point. The agent apologized and left, but the assistant takes a jibe at Mary by telling that she was behaving entitled. Mary did not take it lightly and tells her that she should be fired. The meeting ends on sour terms. Later, we see Mary putting on dinner for the family. Tom goes in to change and found the book offer. He asked why she didn't tell him about it because it was huge money. Mary was totally surprised to see the signing amount. She was offered $2 million for the new book. The family had dinner and kids go to sleep. We see Mary and Tom making love. Later, we find Tom sharing a smoke with Mary when he tells about the financial trouble at work. He was in a very bad spot and only way out of it was if Mary takes the book offer. Mary was very upset with Tom, but eventually she realized that she had no way out. Next scene opens at spa. Elaine tries to convince her to take the offer. Mary makes an intriguing comment by saying that she becomes a completely different person when she starts writing. Elaine recommends her an agency that provide nannies. Mary takes her advice and goes to visit the agency. The lady driving the agency, Angela, shows her around, and Mary is impressed with what she saw. Angela assured that the girls working as nannies are from impeccable backgrounds and great with children. Mary agrees to interview some potential candidates for the job. Next day, we see Mary conducting those interviews, but no one seemed to impress her. Tom called to check in on her. She replied that she does not believe anyone could take care of her kids like herself. Anyway, just when she was done with her last interview, another candidate came in. She introduced herself as Grace. Grace immediately caught Mary's attention when she found Grace reading during the time Mary went to grab a cup of tea. She returned and started to ask about her whereabouts. Their conversation got interrupted by a call. While Mary was away, her kids started throwing tantrums. Grace saw the opportunity to show her worth and handled the situation wisely. Mary was impressed to see her kids having fun with her. Mary saw Grace's piqued interest towards book, so she took her to her library. Grace picked up one of her book and was excited to learn that Mary was an actual writer and how lucky she was to be in her presence. That really sealed the deal. Mary told her that she was going to start her new book and that's why she needed someone to look after her kids. Grace assured that she would be the perfect fit for her and Mary agreed. They shook on it and asked Grace to start from next day. Next morning opens at Mary's house. Elaine is there for a visit. She finds Grace cute. Kids wanted to go to the pool, but Mary was busy, so Grace said she could help. She was not carrying a swimsuit, so Mary offered one of hers. Kids were having fun with Grace while Mary and Elaine were watching from distance. Elaine expresses her concerns towards Grace being so attractive, but Mary assures that she had nothing to worry about. The day ends and we see Grace chatting with the kids while Tom and Mary and going for it in the kitchen. She prepares a bath for the kids and started to leave. Tom asked if she wanted to stay for dinner. Grace replied she did not want to hinder their family time. Next morning, Grace is seen serving coffee to Mary. Mary loved that but was modest about not needed to be taken care of. Grace insisted that she loved taking care of them, so she lets her. Grace was organizing the kitchen when she heard Mary screaming. She rushed towards the sound and found Mary had hurt herself by shattered glass. She immediately attended to it. Mary liked it and suggested that they should play hooky for the day, and they both went lingerie shopping. Mary was a regular, so the saleswoman took them both to the changing room. Mary insisted Grace to try some. Grace was hesitant initially, but agreed. Mary was enthusiastically dressing up Grace when we see them having a fleeting moment that took Mary by surprise. Next morning, we see Mary facing a writer's block. To clear her head, she decided to have a smoke and take a stroll. She finds Grace changing her clothes. That seemed to intrigue her. During a meeting with her publisher, Mary was not able to focus. Tempting images of Grace kept emerging, and that shocked her. Later, we see Mary confessing to Elaine about her newly found desires. Elaine jokes about Grace being the seductress who has ill intentions towards her family. Mary gets worked up for a minute, but eventually relaxes when Elaine lightens the mood by saying it was a joke. Next day, we see Mary lying on her stomach topless, and Grace arrives with tea. Mary asked Grace if she could apply lotion on her back. Grace kind of enjoys that. Then Mary strips and goes into the pool and asks Grace to join her. They have a fun time when Mary reveals that she has finally broken her writer's block, and it was because of Grace. We sense an attachment growing between them. Once Mary dozes off on the couch and finds Grace was making love to her. She could not tell if it was real, so next day she confronts Grace about it, telling her that event can never happen again. But Grace had no clue of what Mary was referring to. It relieves Mary to know that it was indeed a dream. One day we see Grace preparing bath for Mary. After Mary was in the bath, Grace walks up to her and starts massaging her. Mary enjoys at first, but slowly starts to resist when the massage turned into something more pleasurable. Grace didn't bother and continued, and Mary gave up eventually and was completely lost in pleasure. Suddenly we see Mary opening her eyes and find that she was alone. She was again in the dilemma if it was a dream, but we see Mary making great progress with her book with more of these episodes. Time passed, and 3 weeks later we see Mary and Grace taking a road trip across the woods. They stop at a secluded spot and set up their picnic. They have few glasses of wine, and Mary thanked Grace as she helped her break her block and praised her, saying that she was the best partner a woman could have. Grace liked books, so Mary decided to read her one. Slowly we see Grace making her move and getting intimate with Mary. Mary did not resist and they make out. It was dusk and they were about to return. Mary noticed that someone had sliced the tires and they had to walk all the way home. On reaching, we see Elaine waiting for Mary. On seeing her, she pulls her to a corner and presented her concerns about Tom having an affair with Grace. Mary was so mad to hear that she immediately asks her to leave. Later that night, while Mary was preparing dinner, we see she again has an intimate moment with Grace. Mary was drunk and went to bed early. Suddenly, she woke up and heard moaning sounds coming from the kitchen. Upon reaching, she found Tom making out with Grace. She got so mad that she passed out. On waking, she realized it was dream. She was so traumatized that she had an outburst over the dinner table. Soon on coming back to her senses, she calms down. That night we see Mary is unsettled. She gets out of bed and grabs her draft, but we are not shown what happens next. Next morning we see Mary waking up in a good mood. She receives a call from the same caregiver agency for her response. Mary was shocked to learn that Grace was not one of theirs. That really terrifies her. She goes to snoop around and found that she was a fake. She hurries to tell this to Elaine. Little did she know something terrible had already happened. Elaine was murdered. When investigation sets in, she was even more scared to learn that evidences point her as the murderer, although she had no memory of it. She had a hunch that somehow Grace was involved in all of this. Tom got his lawyers to buy her some time. She goes to her orphanage to find out more about Grace and learned was mentally unstable and had split personality. Upon learning the sinister truth, she rushes home to alert Tom. At home we see Tom in the shower and Grace enters the scene with a knife. She was angry at Tom for helping Mary and wanted to hurt him. Tom tried to fight but ended up getting stabbed. Soon Mary arrives and finds Tom bleeding in the shower. Grace enters the room completely horrified. She even calls emergency for help. Mary kept pressing to know who stabbed Tom. Suddenly something clicks and Grace was completely a different person. She picked up the knife and went after Mary. We see an intense conflict between them. Grace was fighting her dark side continuously but was losing. We learn that Grace was oppressed from her childhood and had developed this personality to protect herself. Grace's dark side takes over and she starts choking Mary. Mary tries to fight back and somehow manages to get her hands on a flower vase and bash it across Grace's head. That put an end to the fight. The scene ends on that note. We see that 1 year has passed and Mary has finished her book. She visits Elaine's grave and pays her tribute. Later she goes to an institution where we see that Grace is kept. She visits her often and spends time with her. From that we learn that Mary took her responsibility for treatment and did not abandon her. She visits her regularly and got her the help she always needed. And there you have it. The movie concludes with a resolution that leaves viewers questioning the boundaries between reality and fiction, as Mary grapples with the consequences of her choices. Thank you for joining me. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more exciting movie recap.